Hi, it's Jennifer McGuire for twopeasinAbucket.com. This is week 2 of Fall Stamp Camp, and I'm going to focus on doing enhanced backgrounds. For all of these backgrounds, I just use clear embossing powder and embossing ink, background stamps, and distress ink. So here are the cards. The first one is for tone-on-tone embossed background, and this is done on the blue part of this card here. So you can see it's tone-on-tone, but has a soft center. So I'm starting by using my ink blending tool from Ranger with some distress ink, and this is Broken China Blue. When you do this, you want to start off of the paper and work your way on with the ink. This gets a nice blended look, and you want to use the foam ink applicator for this. Here I just did a few different ones so you can see different results. Now since distress ink stays wet for a while, you have to heat it before you move on to embossing. So here I've got some embossing ink and a Hero Arts large background stamp. And I'm going to stamp this onto the inked edge that I did. When I want to make sure something's center, I like to lay it, the piece onto the inked stamp. So here you can see one hand's always keeping it still and the other's rubbing it on to make sure I get good coverage. And this works really well for me. You can also use a mouse pad for good coverage underneath, whatever works best, but I like to do it this way. So here I'm just putting on some clear embossing powder. And after heating it, you can see the embossed area there. Now I'm going back with the exact same ink, but applying ink heavily all over the entire surface. So where I have the inked edges underneath the embossing, it'll be a little bit of blue on blue, but towards the center where I didn't apply ink before, the embossed will resist this ink and show white through. So it's just a great way to get like a varied background. And here you can see the final result, and I just wipe it with a wet wipe or with a wet paper towel or cloth to remove excess ink. So you can see how there's color behind the embossed area on the edges. So here are the other pieces too. I really like how this softens up a background. And here's the card once again. You can see how I incorporated it here, and it would also work great on a scrapbook page. This is patterned, embossed, and inked background. So basically, I'm doing embossing on a patterned paper. I decided to use textbook paper on this piece. You can see it on the brown, but you can start with any pattern paper underneath. I just wanted to use a vintage piece. So this is a cling stamp from Hero Arts. It just sticks nicely to an acrylic mount, and you can see the label through, which is quite nice. So I'm going to ink it up with embossing ink, just as I did before, and stamp it right on to the text paper. Again, you can use a striped pattern paper, a patterned pattern paper, anything you want. So I'm going to again shake on clear embossing powder onto the embossed image, or the stamped image. After I heat this up, it'll just be a clear embossed area. Now this is dark because of the type of paper, but usually it would just be a clear tone on a tone. So I'm going back with a very dark distress ink and covering it very heavily. So I'm using walnut stain ink so that I can get really high contrast, and in the areas that are not embossed, I want it to be completely dark so that the pattern or the text only shows through on the embossed areas. I love doing this technique. It's really fun with stripes too. Again, I'm wiping it with a little moisture, and then I'm going to heat it just so that it dries really quickly. So you can see that the pattern shows through on the clear embossed areas. And here's the card that incorporates this. Next, I'm going to show you a multicolor embossed and inked background. And that's what I did for the centerpiece on this card. This one's really fun to do, and you can do it in many colors. First, I start out with white paper, once again, and I'm going to add different shades of distress ink. Again, you start off of the paper and work on with your foam ink blending tool. And here I'm doing some Broken China, and I'm going to work in some other colors. I also used peeled paint green distress ink and some scattered straw distress ink, which is a nice kind of yellowy tan color. Now when you do this, you just want to start on the edge and work your way onto the other color to make it overlap. So you can see how it starts to blend there in between the two colors. And there's some yellow. I'm not worried too much about making this blend because we're going to end up doing so much inking over it, but I wanted to just make sure there were distinct areas of color in the background. It would be really fun to spray this with water and just stop here and get kind of a watercolored background too. There's a lot of things that you can do with areas like this. And so I'm going to heat it up with the heat gun so it dries quickly. Now this is a wood stamp from Hero Arts, and I'm going to stamp it onto the background with embossing ink. This stamp is supposed to be, I guess, for holiday because it's a pine, but I think it works for just about any theme card. So now I've clear embossed this as I had before, and again I'm going back and inking over it. Now I'm applying a heavy amount of dark green peeled paint distress ink so that all of the area that's not embossed turns this dark green, but where I did clear emboss, the original color shows through. So basically the clear embossing protects whatever's underneath. And now I'm going back with some vintage photo to just darken up the edges with a little bit of brown. Now when I remove some of the extra ink with some moisture here with a wet wipe, you get a nice distinct color coming through the clear embossed areas. So here it is incorporated onto a card. You can see the yellow, green, and blue areas shining through. And here are the cards together. All of them just use a clear embossed background and some distress inks for different looks. Thanks for watching week 2 of Stamp Camp on 2peasindabucket.com. Be sure to visit our website for more ideas.